The conference room smelled like stale tech hub coffee and nervous sweat, a specific sensory blend that usually preceded an absolute disaster in the Seattle startup scene. I sat calmly at the head of the dark conference table, my fingers resting flat against the cool aluminum chassis of my laptop. I was completely relaxed because anxiety is just a reaction to uncertainty, and I was never uncertain about the systems I engineered. For 5 long years, I had served as the chief back-end architect at Nexus Logistics, a company trying to disrupt the global supply chain. I was the silent engine making sure that disruption actually functioned instead of crashing under heavy user traffic. Standing right at the dry erase board was Arthur, the founder's 27-year-old son who possessed a shiny new business degree, a smile purchased straight from a dental catalog, and a brand new title as Chief Technology Officer. He had held this executive position for exactly 4 days, and in that short time frame, he had already managed to use the word synergy, paradigm, and blockchain in a single coherent sentence. Arthur pointed a red laser pointer directly at my presentation screen, waving the tiny over the intricate architecture diagram of the core optimization module I had spent 6 months building from scratch. He crossed his arms arrogantly and declared that the entire back-end framework looked like complete spaghetti code full of unnecessary bloat. The entire room fell into an uncomfortable silence as my team of junior developers stared directly down at the table in absolute disbelief. They knew this optimization layer was not bloat, but rather a masterpiece of modern load balancing logic that kept our entire platform online during peak traffic spikes. It was the sole reason our servers could process 10,000 concurrent data requests without instantly melting into silicon slag. I adjusted my glasses and calmly explained that the system bypassed legacy database queries to route traffic directly through a memory cache layer, improving data throughput by 20%. I warned him that removing it would cause application response times to jump from 50 milliseconds to 3 agonizing seconds. Arthur let out a wet, condescending laugh that echoed off the glass walls of the conference room as he dismissed my technical concerns entirely. He claimed that users were perfectly used to waiting longer than that for a rideshare app, and explained that his father brought him in to lean out the company code for an upcoming acquisition. He noted that the corporate buyers at Vanguard Tech were strictly looking for highly simplified infrastructure, ignoring the reality of how the software operated. My stomach tightened in anxiety as Arthur stepped over to the master development console mirrored on the massive wall monitor, revealing that he had been granted full administrator access to the repository. I had previously warned the company founder that giving his inexperienced son admin access was like handing a loaded weapon to a wild animal, but my advice was completely ignored. Arthur announced to the room that we no longer needed this complex back-end voodoo, his fingers hovering ominously over the mechanical keyboard as he highlighted the entire core directory. I stood up instantly, my voice dropping an octave as I commanded him not to touch the master repository or delete the core migration logic. Arthur sneered back at me, claiming he was finally cleaning house and streamlining our operation, completely ignoring the fact that our automated deployment pipeline was actively synced to the live production server. With a theatrical flourish that belonged in a terrible daytime drama, Arthur slammed his finger onto the delete key, committed the change, and pushed it to the live cloud network. The display monitor flickered wildly for a fraction of a second before a long stream of automated deployment text flashed across the interface and came to a sudden halt. He casually dusted off his hands and bragged about making the system leaner, entirely unaware of the catastrophic digital avalanche he had just unleashed. A junior developer named Julian, whom I had personally mentored from his first day at the company, looked so horrified that I genuinely thought he was going to vomit right there. A strange, serene calm washed over my mind as I sat back down in my chair, feeling like a controlled demolition expert watching an amateur detonate explosives incorrectly. I looked Arthur dead in the eye and explained that he had just obliterated our entire data logic layer, turning our platform into an empty front-end shell that could no longer authenticate users. Arthur turned bright red with pure rage, shouting that my negative attitude was exactly the kind of toxic behavior that made me a terrible cultural fit for his new vision. He puffed out his chest and loudly declared that I was officially terminated from my position, ordering me to pack my belongings and exit the premises immediately. The entire conference room gasped in collective shock, and Julian stood up to protest the decision before Arthur snapped at him to sit down or face the exact same fate. Right then, my personal phone began vibrating against the table surface, displaying a phone call from a phone number that had been trying to reach me for several weeks. In the past, I had ignored these repeated corporate recruiting calls out of a deep sense of loyalty to the original founder who gave me my first real break. But looking at the digital wreckage on the monitor and the absolute disrespect from the new management, I finally realized that my loyalty was completely misplaced. I picked up the vibrating device and swiped right to answer the call, completely ignoring Arthur as he continued to ramble on about hiring rockstar developers and fresh corporate perspectives. The voice on the other end of the line was smooth, measured, and instantly recognizable as Raymond Vance, the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Vanguard Tech. Raymond explained that they were currently finalizing their corporate due diligence on Nexus logistics and explicitly stated that my pristine back-end architecture was the only reason they remained interested. I smiled faintly, kept my voice perfectly clear so everyone in the room could hear me, and told Raymond that I was officially accepting his employment offer. Arthur stopped talking mid-sentence, his smug expression instantly faltering as he demanded to know exactly who I was speaking to on the telephone. I ignored his question entirely, telling Raymond that my schedule had unexpectedly cleared out and that I could actually report to their corporate headquarters within the hour. Raymond sounded pleasantly surprised by the sudden development, asking if everything was going smoothly on my end of the business operation. I locked eyes with the arrogant founder's son, assured Raymond that everything was absolutely perfect, and promised to see him at their office shortly before hanging up. I calmly shut my laptop, wrapped up my power charger, and placed my belongings into a small cardboard storage box I retrieved from the office supply closet. I looked at my stunned development team one last time, told Arthur good luck with his live deployment, and walked directly out into the main office floor. My heels clicked softly against the polished concrete surface as I walked past the sales department, where people were completely oblivious to the fact that their company was already dead. I knew that within 50 minutes, the server cash tokens would fully expire, locking every single employee out of the master administrative panel permanently. Within an hour, I was sitting in a stunning glass office on the top floor of Vanguard Tech, looking out over the beautiful rainy Seattle skyline. Raymond handed me a digital tablet containing the schematics for a massive new financial tech platform they were secretly developing, codenamed Project Horizon. He explained that they never actually cared about the Nexus brand, but simply wanted to acquire the engineering talent capable of building ultra-high-speed data distribution networks. Raymond offered me the position of chief software architect for the new project, complete with a massive salary increase, significant corporate equity, and the total freedom to hire my own engineering team. Over the next 2 weeks, my former colleague sent me frantic text messages detailing the absolute chaos occurring back at my old workplace. Arthur had accidentally corrupted the primary database configurations while trying to manually fix the routing errors, causing the entire system to enter an infinite loop of crashing servers. The cloud computing bills were rapidly compounding into tens of thousands of dollars in overages every single day as the broken platform tried to automatically reboot itself. When the day of the final acquisition demonstration arrived, the desperate management team tried to fake the software functionality by hard-coding static data into the user interface. The corporate evaluation team from Vanguard Tech instantly caught the fraudulent activity during the live presentation when they noticed the application was not making actual network requests. The entire $350 million acquisition deal dissolved in less than an hour, leaving Nexus Logistics facing absolute financial ruin and investor lawsuits. Raymond officially withdrew the acquisition offer and filed a formal legal notice against them for a severe breach of good faith during negotiations. I used my new executive authority to immediately hire Julian, along with our top systems administrator and quality assurance lead, rescuing them from the sinking corporate ship. Months later, I received an urgent communication from the liquidation firm that was tasked with dismantling the remaining assets of my former employer. They were legally locked out of the historical company databases because Arthur had accidentally deleted the master recovery keys before he was ultimately ousted from the company. They desperately needed my personal digital signature to decrypt the financial records required for a pending federal tax audit of the bankrupt business. I drove back to the abandoned office one final time, stepping through the empty rooms where monitors were stacked up like dusty dominoes in the darkness. I sat down at a temporary terminal, plugged in my private security key, and cleared away the final digital remnants of the system I had protected for 5 years. As the data successfully decrypted, my phone rang with a call from the original founder, who sounded completely broken as he apologized for letting his son destroy our foundation. I told him quietly that the optimization module was never bloat before hanging up the phone and walking back out into the fresh afternoon air. I stepped into my vehicle, checked a text from Julian confirming our new platform had just safely processed a record-breaking volume of live traffic, and smiled as I drove away.